could really understand, you know, the impact. Like today, where were you when Kennedy was shot? There's definitely that sense here as well.
People are seeing pictures now of Benjamin Netanyahu, the head of the Likud, the opposition party here in Israel. He is in place at the funeral, which, as we say, begins within the half-hour. Dave, we'll ask you to stand by as the morning goes on. I thank you. We're going to take a commercial break. When we come back, more coverage of the funeral of Yitzhak Rabin. Stay with us.
Introducing a new luxury vehicle with the most powerful V8 in its class, dual airbags, and the ability to take you where no luxury car can. The new Jeep Grand Cherokee Limited. With over 40 major advancements, it's truly the perfect luxury vehicle for whatever nature unveils.
There's only one Jeep, and it's only at your Key States Jeep and Eagle dealers.
School was a nightmare.
I mean, math was just probably the hardest subject. I would have to read everything over and over again.
My grades were so bad, they took me off the team.
I got off fantasy.
I was always behind.
I was pretty dumb.
That's why I called Sylvan.
Sylvan was the answer.
I love it.
It all came together at Sylvan.
Now I get A's, straight A's.
I'm back on the team.
I know I can do it.
Sylvan was worth every penny.
I think I'm a pretty smart kid.
Sylvan Learning Center. Better grades are just the beginning. Call 1-800-EDUCATE. That's 1-800-EDUCATE. There's a new gasoline.
What's new about it?
With the power to drive down maintenance costs.
Really? Are you serious?
Yes, we are. New Exxon gasoline keeps your engine cleaner,
Clean is good.
so it can help drive down maintenance costs.
Could gas do that?
New Exxon gasoline can, with the power to drive down maintenance costs
Gas that can save you money.
for more reliable performance.
Okay, I'll try it.
People stopping by to rely on the Tiger.
To test pans with the DuPont Silverstone Select surface, we dropped them off at real-life homes. Then we came back for the results. And the pans. These people grew rather attached to them because Silverstone Select took the heat and everything else families could dish out. It's our most durable Silverstone yet. Frankly, we've never seen results quite like this. DuPont Silverstone Select for pans that take whatever you dish out. You'll find Silverstone Extra on Master Cuisine Series 4000 at Caldor.
Israel and the world continue to come to grips with the assassination of Israeli Prime Minister Yitzhak Rabin. And joining us now to discuss the repercussions of this tragic event on the peace process and on the way the people of Israel view themselves is the Consul General of Israel in New York, Ambassador Colette Avital.
Good morning.
Good morning. On Sunday on Good Morning America, you said that the assassination of Mr. Rabin was in some sense a wake-up call for Israel. Can you expand on that and tell us what you think the impact of this tragic event will be on Israelis and how they view themselves in their country?
Well, I think it is enough to look at the number of people that have been streaming next to his coffin. Over 1 million people, which is more than a fifth of the population, most of them youngsters. I think it is a sense of shock and a sense of getting together. And I recall one of the last pictures of Yitzhak Rabin when he was in Washington at the second signing, when he said, "Look at us. Could you have imagined this picture a few years ago, myself with the leaders of the Arab world?" And today, if you look at the funeral, you see the same thing. And you see President Clinton there, and you almost feel in a moment that maybe the Prime Minister will be there to greet him. So I think it is a sense of shock. I think that this is something we never expected from our society. And it's very deep in the Israeli ethos, because thou shalt not murder is really the first commandment. And we never thought that anyone, and I believe Yitzhak Rabin himself never thought that a Jew, an Israeli, would murder him. This is why all the warnings were not taken, were not heeded.
Yes, it is in that sense then a wake-up call. Ambassador, thank you very much. And right now, for those stations around the country that want to go to their local news, this is the time for you to do so. But for those stations that will stay with us, we are continuing our coverage of the funeral of Yitzhak Rabin. And Yitzhak Rabin will be laid to rest today in the city where he was born, in Jerusalem. And the world was shocked, of course, at his assassination on Saturday, and his nation mourns their great loss.
We should not let the land flowing with milk and honey become a land flowing with blood and tears.
Yitzhak Rabin, who died in the struggle for peace, was well acquainted with war. He was born in Jerusalem in 1922, the son of immigrants from Eastern Europe. In the early 1940s, Rabin joined the Jewish Underground Army fighting for Israel's independence. In 1948, Israel was victorious and Rabin's star began to rise. He became chief of staff and focused on building the army, and his efforts paid off. In 1967, Israeli forces defeated 3 Arab armies and captured Jerusalem, the West Bank, Gaza, and Sinai in just 6 days. After the 1967 victory, Rabin spent nearly 5 years as ambassador to the United States. When he went home to Israel, he was named prime minister. During that time, he expressed his desire to begin peace talks with Israel's Arab neighbors.
I think the fact that I served for such a long time in the military service brings even more force to my determination to try to bring about peace.
Rabin served as defense minister during the Palestinian uprisings, or Intifada, issuing orders to break the arms and legs of Palestinians who threw rocks at soldiers. In 1992, he began his second term as prime minister. The following year would bring the historic peace agreement with the PLO signed at the White House.
Enough of blood and tears. Enough.
In 1994, he shared the Nobel Peace Prize with PLO leader Yasser Arafat and Israel's foreign minister Shimon Peres. And just 2 months ago, he was back in Washington as Israel and the PLO signed the second part of their agreement. And in the minutes before he was killed, he reminded his nation of his dream of peace for Israel and for the Middle East. And this now is the scene, the Mount Herzl Cemetery, today in Jerusalem. And right now we will go to Morton Dean, who is standing by at the news desk here in New York. Morton.
Thank you, Joan. Good morning, everyone. Our top story, of course, is the funeral for Yitzhak Rabin, but there is some other news. Votes still being counted in Poland. President Lech Wałęsa and an ex-communist leader are running neck and neck after yesterday's election. They will meet again, a runoff in 2 weeks. An angry president, the president of Serbia, said to be angry at the U.S. He claims he is being asked to make too many concessions at the peace talks in Ohio. In the Philippines, the death toll 500 and expected to go higher. It's now estimated Typhoon Angela destroyed 50,000 homes. It survived the huge 1906 San Francisco earthquake and others, but yesterday the St. Paulus Lutheran Church was destroyed by fire. A scary time early yesterday for Canadian Prime Minister Jean Chrétien. An intruder carrying a knife broke into the Prime Minister's house, got as close as his bedroom door. Chrétien's wife saw the intruder, locked the door, called police. The man was arrested. And remembering Rabin, last night, this service in New York City was one of many across the United States honoring Israel's assassinated Prime Minister. And now we're going to move over to Spence for another look at the nation's weather. Spencer?
Thank you, Mort. We've got an interesting map today. A lot of stuff going on here in the east. As a clearing, it turned sharply colder over the weekend. We had temperatures dropping below freezing in the northeast and mid-Atlantic states during the overnight hours. But today is going to be a nice mild day. Across the northern tier of states, after you move westward a bit, things get sort of wintry. We've got some snow and rain mixed over the upper Mississippi Valley, then a little bit of a break, some sunshine, and then more snow developing over the northern Rockies, although it'll be light snow, and some rainfall along coastal areas of Washington State and Oregon. Sunny and mild in the southwest, and a rather big rainstorm developing in the southern plains. The heaviest rainfall today will be in New Mexico and western Texas, but it'll start to develop and push eastward as the day goes on. Some of this rain will reach into the lower Mississippi Valley. Looks like it's going to be sunny over the Sunshine State of Florida. And that's a look at our weather for now. We'll have more coming up later in the program, and now we go back to Charlie.
All right, thank you very much, Spencer Christian. ABC News, Britt Hume, White House correspondent, traveled with the president to Jerusalem this morning. The president getting in just a few hours ago, spending some private time prior to the funeral with Leah Rabin, the wife of Yitzhak Rabin. Britt Hume, can you hear me?
I can, Charlie.
This has been obviously a very emotional couple of days for the president, very emotional when he went to the Knesset this morning and paid his respects at the beer.
It has, Charlie, and it's been clear in his voice and what he has said that he feels this very much. He developed what he says is a strong bond with Yitzhak Rabin, a man he said he both admired and loved. He has mounted here, Charlie, the civilian equivalent of a show of force from the United States. We have Presidents Carter and Bush are with him, and were with him on Air Force One and sat with him talking to reporters saying that they wanted to express their solidarity not only with the state of Israel, but with this process toward peace for which Rabin had risked so much. Not only, of course, are they here, but the entire bipartisan leadership of Congress is here, secretaries of state going back to the Carter administration as well, so that as far as the United States is concerned, this is a resounding statement of support for Israel and support for this risky peace process that is still underway and about which there has been so much worry.
And Britt, I gather coming over on Air Force One, he had some comments general in nature about the democracy here in Israel.
Well, he was asked about this assassination, and he talked about the tempestuous nature of democracy in Israel and the raucous debate, which he said he admired and appreciated, but he said it was necessary not just for Israel, but for all democratic countries to keep debate within proper bounds. It has been a source of, I think, relief to American officials to hear similar reactions from the Israeli opposition, which is going to support the efforts of Prime Minister, now acting Prime Minister Perez, to create a new government under his leadership, which it is, of course, hoped strongly by American officials, principally the president, will move forward with this peace process, as they all call it.
And I gather very quickly, Britt, he has meetings later today with King Hussein, with President Mubarak, with Shimon Peres, who will take over the government here. Are those in nature about the funeral, or are those really to see where the peace process goes from here?
Well, U.S. officials are being a little coy about that. There has been some thought that perhaps President Mubarak might now be asked, as he has in the past, to get in touch with the Syrian leader. And it's likely that we'll know more about that later in the day.
All right, Britt Hume, thank you very much. We're going to take a break, be back with funeral ceremonies in a moment.
What's the taste of good times together? It's easy to recall.
Butterball turkeys are deep basted, so they're always juicy, always tender. You can count on the holidays to be special, just like you can count on Butterball to be always juicy, always tender.
Of all the tastes that make memories, the best of all is Butterball.
At last, a positive clean from Vaseline Intensive Care, a new moisturizing body wash.
My old soap cleans, but it strips my skin dry.
Science calls that the negative clean. So Vaseline Research created the positive clean. Our proven moisturizers combined with effective cleansers turn each shower into a positive for your skin.
In one easy step, my skin feels clean, yet soft, like it's been moisturized.
New Vaseline Intensive Care Moisturizing Body Wash, the positive clean.
When Mom and Dad said, let's go to the nation's capital, you stayed at Holiday Inn. You thought it must cost $1 million to stay in a place with so much cool stuff. You were Commander-in-Chief. Now that you're visiting any place the road takes you, you know that Holiday Inn hotels don't cost a whole lot. And with all the changes we're making, there's even more cool stuff for you on the way to the top, business travelers. Next stop, a real big house on Pennsylvania Avenue. Holiday Inn, in keeping with the times.
Ladies, it is I who inspired Remington's new smart setter. These heated rollers change colors like me. White when they are ready to roll, colorful when you're done. Perfectly timed curls. Remington's new smart setter. She loves being red.
The Olive Garden's never-ending pasta bowl is coming to an end. Enjoy unlimited refill after refill of your favorite pasta, plus free super salad and breadsticks. Although the pasta's never-ending, this offer ends November 12th. So hurry to the Olive Garden.
Yitzhak Rabin, the first native-born Israeli to become prime minister. The man who led his nation in war against the Arabs. The man who led his nation to peace with the Palestinians. And now, the first Israeli prime minister to be assassinated. Today, Yitzhak Rabin is laid to rest.
The funeral ceremony is about to begin at Mount Herzl. There is Leah Rabin, Mrs. Rabin, and the family waiting as the coffin is about to be brought to the site. Mrs. Rabin extraordinarily gave an interview this morning just before coming to this site. Said bodyguards told her it was a toy pistol that had been fired at her husband, and she was spirited away. It wasn't until later that she found out that he had been killed. ABC News' Peter Jennings standing by, who is going to take us through the funeral ceremonies this morning. Peter?
Good morning, Charlie. You can see, and those who have been with us before 7 o'clock in the east today know just how many people have gathered at Mount Herzl today, which is the largest and most important cemetery in all of Israel, both for political and military leaders. And as you have already told people this morning, thousands of people have begun to gather here, not only from across Israel, but from around the world. This is almost an unprecedented crowd in this country. And this funeral ceremony this morning, based in a tradition created some 20 centuries ago by Talmudic rabbis to create a series of laws and customs and ceremonies that help mourners ease their pain and accelerate the healing process. King Hussein, who flew here this morning by helicopter with his wife, the American-born Queen, King paying his first visit to Jerusalem since before the 1967 war. Very few people know the anxiety of violence in this city better than he does. As a young 17-year-old, he was in Jerusalem when his grandfather was assassinated in front of him. And this in itself is a strange and revealing scene about the changes in the Middle East, as Prime Minister Rabin himself has noted so many times recently at the White House when he said, "Look at us, Arabs and Jews together." Because King Hussein, the Egyptian President Hosni Mubarak, representatives from Qatar and Oman and the Persian Gulf, and even a modest, though not particularly forthcoming message of condolence from Syria to the north today, though there is no Syrian representative here, and the Palestinian Authority in the Gaza Strip and the West Bank, the genesis of the violence which killed Mr. Rabin, has sent a very high-level delegation, all of whom had come to know the Prime Minister in their lengthy peace negotiations. Mrs. Rabin, married to her husband for 43 years, looking at her this morning as consoling to others as they appear to be to her. The Prime Minister's very simple coffin, covered in the Israeli flag, being carried, accompanied perhaps is a better word, by 8 Israeli generals, all of whom are on active service today. There are so many people in this country, of a little more than 5 million, who have served with the late Prime Minister on the battlefield and in politics. The very simplicity of this funeral is important to members of the Jewish faith. And everybody, no matter which faith they are, will be able to understand what he said here today. All across the nation now, the sirens begin to ring. It has happened in this country before at those moments when the nation from top to bottom, north to south, east to west, wishes to be together and think together of what has transpired. sound of the siren, and while you had a look at the what's sometimes called God's Acre on Mount Herzl, the National Cemetery, from the Lebanese border in the north to the Sinai in the south, from the Jordan River to the Mediterranean Sea, if this has been like other occasions, and I do not doubt for a second that it has been, people have stopped and got out of their cars on the highways. They have stood silently in front of their television sets in their offices, in their homes. But the whole nation has come to a halt to ponder what it is that has befallen them. And at home, of course, we have heard more than several times in the last day or so that this is the first political assassination in Israel since the state was founded, and it has brought this state face to face with a modern reality, with having to look at itself. This ceremony and the people who come from so many nations also, of course, testifies to the so apparent notion that this is no longer the small, beleaguered nation. This is a powerful and important nation in the world community. People have come to pay respects to the nation and to the man who led it, the man who led it in war, in the 1948 War of Independence, the 1967 great Israeli victory over all of the Arab armies, the 1973 war, the 1981 Israeli invasion of Lebanon, which cost this nation so dearly, and in the final days to Mr. Rabin, who had become absolutely passionate and poetic about the peace process. Anyone who had any contact with him in the final days of his life knows that he was elated, positively elated, by the notion that he and his foreign minister and partner in peace, his longtime political adversary, Shimon Peres, were now in their lifetime able to make peace with those neighbors they had fought so determinedly in almost half a century. He said the intention of the Jewish funeral ceremony is to be utterly simple, to emphasize the egalitarian nature of the faith, that rich and poor should be accorded equal treatment, which is why at all ceremonies there is a simple wooden coffin and, for the most part, a simple white shroud in which the body is wrapped.
This is the Israeli morning prayer for the dead. Yuval, the young son of Yitzhak Rabin, has recited this Kaddish for the dead, and will conclude with Oseh Shalom, another prayer for peace. This is more symbolic, and this funeral, more so than any other funeral. And here is the President of Israel, Ezra Weizmann, the first speaker. Leah.
This is the first of several speakers. This is Ezra Weizmann, the President of Israel, former Air Force pilot, comrade in arms of Yitzhak Rabin, former Minister of Defense.
From his birth in 1922. A generation born for fighting for independence, to build a land that's new, and to build a This youth fought for his country since his birth. Yitzhak represented this youth, was drafted into the Palmach, and I will repeat this since I met him in 48. Beautiful man. Leah was also from this generation. She was also from the Palmach. Together, they befriended each other, married, and built a home. Yitzchak, his whole life, served the country. He served in the Jewish army, in the Israeli army, with dignity, lieutenant general, and then general. I had the experience, very interesting experience, to serve under him in difficult days and interesting days. I will not say the entire history of the courses and the development and the exit later to political life and diplomatic life in Washington and the life of a minister. But he was among the first of our generation. But the last 2.5 years, from my perspective, and I hope from his perspective, were the years that we spent the most together. We met at least twice a month, maybe more, for at least an hour and a half, in a very intimate and intense conversation, he and I, about everything that was significant and painful to the land of Israel. And I know that many times that I never heard a criticism from him, and he considered and continued to be a courageous man. These years summarize the entire years of the Army of Israel. In 4 eyes, with 4 eyes, you learn about one another and get to know one another. I heard about him and about his pride that Israel was one of the most prosperous states in the area. Its absorption of hundreds of thousands and its civil life. Large pride that in its time eventually led to talks with the Palestinians and the later peace with the Jordanians. Maybe it symbolizes more than anything what Yitzchak achieved in his life. All these states that came to pay their last respects, heads of states, ministers from all edges of the earth, they came to pay their last respects out of recognition, personally with him for many years. Here is President Clinton, the head of Britain, France, King of Jordan, Queen of Holland, and I will not even continue on this long list. They came first and foremost to pay respect to Yitzchak. And I know that he would have known that this was to pay respect to Israel. State of Israel that is today, that is appreciated all over the world. A state that derives and strives more for peace than for anything. I will miss those days and those hours that I sat with him and spoke. When we sat alone, we ate some good food, we drank some good stuff, and I will miss him, just as everyone will. It is my desire, in one sentence, from the Torah chapter of the week, to quote, "And Yitzchak was planted in that land, and God blessed him, and that man grew, and God blessed him." Silence. rest.
Hod Ma'alato Hussein Melech Yarden, His
King.
Majesty King Hussein of the Hashemite Kingdom of Jordan.
Hussein of Jordan, the next-door neighbor, who came so particularly close to Yitzhak Rabin when they worked together that the two of them used to joke about how they sneaked a cigarette together in the White House when Bill Clinton wasn't looking. These were genuine friends at the end.
My friends, I had never thought that a moment would come like this, when I would grieve the loss of a brother, a colleague and a friend. A man, a soldier, who met us on the opposite side of a divide, whom we respected as he respected us. A man I came to know because I realized, as he did, that we have to cross over the divide, establish the dialogue, get to know each other, and strive to leave for those who follow us a legacy that is worthy of them. And so we did. And so we became brethren and friends. I've never been used to standing except with you next to me. Speaking of peace, speaking of our dreams and hopes for generations to come that must live in peace, enjoy human dignity, come together, work together to build the better future which is our right. Never in all my thoughts would it occur to me that my first visit to Jerusalem, in response to your invitation, the invitation of the Speaker of the Knesset, the invitation of the President of Israel, would be on such an occasion. You lived as a soldier, you died as a soldier for peace. And I believe it is time for all of us to come out openly and to speak our peace. Not here today, but for all the times to come. We belong to the camp of peace. We believe in peace. We believe that our one God wishes us to live in peace and wishes peace upon us. So these are his teachings to all the followers of the three great monotheistic religions, the children of Abraham, Let's not keep silent. Let our voices rise high to speak of our commitment to peace. For all times to come. And let us tell those who live in darkness, who are the enemies of life, and through faith and religion and the teachings of our one God, this is where we stand. This is our camp. Maybe God will bless you with the realization that you must join it. And we pray that He will. But otherwise, we are not ashamed, nor are we afraid, nor are we anything but determined to fulfill the legacy for which my friend fell, as did my grandfather in this very city when I was with him and but a young boy. He was a man of courage, a man of vision, and he was endowed with one of the greatest virtues that any man can have. He was endowed with humility. He felt with those around him, and in a position of responsibility, he placed himself, as I do and have done often, in the place of the other partner to achieve a worthy goal. And we achieved peace, an honorable peace, and a lasting peace. He had courage, he had vision, and he had a commitment to peace. And standing here, I commit before you, before my people in Jordan, before the world, myself to continue to do my utmost to ensure that we leave a similar legacy. And when my time comes, I hope it will be like my grandfather's and like Ishaq Rabin's. May your spirit and rise high and make sense for the people of Jordan, my family, the people of Israel, decent people throughout the world feel today. So many live and so many inevitably die. This is the will of God. This is the way of all. But those who are fortunate and lucky in life, those who are great are those who leave something behind. And you are such a man, my friend. The faces in my country amongst the majority of our people, in our armed forces, and people who once were your enemies are somber today, and their hearts are heavy. Let's hope and pray that God will give us all guidance, each in his respective position, to do what he can for the better future that Ishaq Rabin sought with determination and courage. As long as I live, I'll be proud to have known him, to have worked with him as a brother, as a friend, and as a man. And the relationship of friendship that we had is something unique, and I'm proud of that. On behalf of the people of Jordan, my Nardodorian family, my Hashemite family, all those who belong to the camp of peace, to all those who belong to the camp of peace, our deepest sympathies, our deepest condolences as we share together this moment of remembrance and commitment to continue our struggle for the future of generations to come, as did Yitzhak Rabin, and to fulfill his legacy. Thank you.
King Hussein has been profoundly affected by this. This is the tribute of a soldier king to a soldier prime minister. The two fought each other for so many years, struggled for this city, which was once Jordanian, which was once kingdom, ancient kingdom of Israel's capital, and now is united again under Israeli rule. Now President Clinton, the latest of American presidents who's brought so much influence to bear to try to bring peace in the Middle East.
Leah, to the Rabin children and grandchildren and other family members, President Weizmann, Acting Prime Minister Perez, members of the Israeli government and the Knesset, distinguished leaders from the Middle East and around the world, especially His Majesty King Hussein for those remarkable and wonderful comments, and President Mubarak for taking this historic trip here. To all the people of Israel, the American people mourn with you in the loss of your leader, and I mourn with you, for he was my partner and friend. Every moment we shared was a joy because he was a good man, and an inspiration because he was also a great man. Leah, I know that too many times in the life of this country, you were called upon to comfort and console the mothers and the fathers, the husbands and the wives, the sons and the daughters who lost their loved ones to violence and vengeance. You gave them strength. Now we here and millions of people all around the world, in all humility and honor, offer you our strength. May God comfort you among all the mourners of Zion and Jerusalem. Yitzhak Rabin lived the history of Israel. Through every trial and triumph, the struggle for independence, the wars for survival, the pursuit of peace, and all he served on the front lines. This son of David and of Solomon took up arms to defend Israel's freedom and laid down his life to secure Israel's future. He was a man completely without pretense, as all of his friends knew. I read that in 1949, after the War of Independence, David Ben-Gurion sent him to represent Israel at the armistice talks at Rhodes, and he had never before worn a necktie and did not know how to tie the knot. So the problem was solved by a friend who tied it for him before he left and showed him how to preserve the knot simply by loosening the tie and pulling it over his head. Well, the last time we were together, not 2 weeks ago, he showed up for a black tie event on time, but without the black tie. And so he borrowed a tie and I was privileged to straighten it for him. It is a moment I will cherish as long as I live. To him, ceremonies and words were less important than actions and deeds. 6 weeks ago, the King and President Mubarak will remember we were at the White House for signing the Israel-Palestinian agreement, and a lot of people spoke. I spoke, the King spoke, Chairman Arafat spoke, President Mubarak spoke, our foreign ministers all spoke. And finally, Prime Minister Rabin got up to speak, and he said, "First, the good news. I am the last speaker." But he also understood the power of words and symbolism. "Take a look at the stage," he said in Washington. The King of Jordan, the President of Egypt, Chairman Arafat, and us, the Prime Minister and Foreign Minister of Israel, on one platform. Please take a good, hard look. The sight you see before you was impossible, was unthinkable just 3 years ago. Only poets dreamt of it, and to our great pain, soldier and civilian went to their death to make this moment possible. Those were his words. Today, my fellow citizens of the world, I ask all of you to take a good, hard look at this picture. Look at the leaders from all over the Middle East and around the world who have journeyed here today for Yitzhak Rabin and for peace. Though we no longer hear his deep and booming voice, it is he who has brought us together again here in word and deed for peace. Now it falls to all of us who love peace and all of us who love him to carry on the struggle to which he gave life and for which he gave his life. He cleared the path, and his Spirit continues to light the way. His Spirit lives on in the growing peace between Israel and her neighbors. It lives in the eyes of the children, the Jewish and the Arab children, who are leaving behind a past of fear for a future of hope. It lives on in the promise of true security. So let me say to the people of Israel, even in your hour of darkness, his Spirit lives on, and so you must not lose your spirit. Look at what you have accomplished, making a once barren desert bloom, building a thriving democracy in a hostile terrain, winning battles and wars, and now winning the peace, which is the only enduring victory. Your Prime Minister was a martyr for peace, but he was a victim of hate. Surely we must learn from his martyrdom that if people cannot let go of the hatred of their enemies, they risk sowing the seeds of hatred among themselves. I ask you, the people of Israel, on behalf of my nation, that knows its own long litany of loss, from Abraham Lincoln to President Kennedy to Martin Luther King, do not let that happen to you. In the Knesset, in your homes, in your places of worship, stay the righteous course. As Moses said to the children of Israel, when he knew he would not cross over into the promised land, be strong and of good courage. Fear not, for God will go with you. He will not fail you. He will not forsake you. President Waxman, Acting Prime Minister Perez, to all the people of Israel, as you stay the course of peace, I make this pledge: neither will America forsake you. Legend has it that in every generation of Jews from time immemorial, a just leader emerged to protect his people and show them the way to safety. Prime Minister Rabin was such a leader. He knew, as he declared to the world on the White House lawn 2 years ago, that the time had come, in his words, to begin a new reckoning in the relations between people, between parents tired of war, between children who will not know war. here in Jerusalem, I believe, with perfect faith, that he was leading his people to that promised land. This week, Jews all around the world are studying the Torah portion in which God tests the faith of Abraham, patriarch of the Jews and the Arabs. He commands Abraham to sacrifice Yitzhak. Take your son, the one you love, Yitzhak. As we all know, as Abraham, in loyalty to God, was about to kill his son, God spared Yitzhak. Now God tests our faith even more terribly, for he has taken our Yitzhak. But Israel's covenant with God for freedom, for tolerance, for security, for peace, that covenant must close. That covenant was Prime Minister Rabin's life's work. Now we must make it his lasting legacy. His spirit must live on in us. The Kaddish, the Jewish prayer for mourning, never speaks of death, but often speaks of peace. In its closing words, may our hearts find a measure of comfort and our souls the eternal touch of hope. Oseh Shalom, Bimromav, Hu Ya'aseh, Shalom Alyenu, Vi Al Kol Yisrael, Vi Emru, Amen, and Shalom Haver.
President Clinton saying that Mr. Rabin's spirit lives on, so you must not lose your spirit. He addresses primarily to the people of Israel who are so shattered by this experience.
דברו של ראש ממשלת ישראל בפועל ושר החוץ, מר שמעון פרס.
Shimon Peres, the acting Prime Minister, the Foreign Minister, Yitzhak Rabin's political enemy for years and years and years, but his partner ultimately in peace. They could not have gone forward in this endeavor without each other.
ילדים, הנכדים, Your Majesty, Your Excellencies, בני עמי, לא לסתום הגולל בנו. באנו להצדיע לך, יצחק, הצדעה מפורשת למה שהיית. לוחם אז,
You were a fighter
ניצחונות לעמו.
and a winner of victories for your people, a big dreamer
מציאות חדשה בעברנו.
who forged a reality.
במוצאי שבת האחרונה,
Last Saturday night,
שילבנו זרועות.
we joined hands.
שרנו ביחד.
We sang together
שלום.
the song of peace.
חשתי.
I suspected
ברוחך.
and I felt
אמרת לי,
warmth
יש
in your heart.
זרועות על כוונות להתנקש בתוך הסרט הגדולה הזו. לא ידענו,
We did not know what would happen.
שיערנו,
We didn't imagine
שהחבלה תהיה כה גדולה.
that the
אבל ידענו,
collision would be so great.
לפחד מהמוות.
But we knew that we should not be afraid of death
בשלום.
and that we should not hesitate in the
יום
peace.
קודם לכן,
A day before that, we sat together
בעיניים.
with 4 eyes.
פעם ראשונה,
For the first time, you warned me that the work is tiring,
אבל השלום,
but the peace is well worth it.
ידעתי את פתחונך הגדול,
I knew your intuition
את סירובך להיסחף,
and
לא על ידי השלום.
your ability to be drawn toward peace.
חוכמתך הרבה,
And I knew your great
כן
wisdom
זהירותך,
and your cautiousness
סוף דברים בטרם עת. אלה היו
not to expose anything other than truth.
והרי
These were characteristics that were true and that were there since the dawn of your being.
ספקי הקרב
You were there since the early battles of Israel and reached great peace in the Middle East. It was not a fun position, but you weren't necessarily a fun person. Your second nature and your first nature were responsibilities. You became a wonderful leader, able to build mountains and to build roads, to point with your hand and to get to your goal. For the cooperation between us, the cooperation which had no limits, I felt a great, great mercy on your part. You could always breathe easily among the great number of friends who came to support you and your personality. The breakthrough to which you led us open to great satisfaction. And for the new tomorrow, for the new Israel, and for its sons. Yitzhak, the young among the great and brave in Israel. Yitzhak, the great among the makers of peace. You were not like anybody else, and you did not want to imitate any other man. You were not afraid of anything. You knew every detail, and you saw the big picture. And the details were right beside you, one after the other, throughout a great process. Your whole life, you worked hard, day and night. But the last 3 years were successful, with a great intensity. You knew your priorities, and so we reached a new understanding and a new road. Roads were open, and roads were paved. Unemployment declined, and Aliyah to Israel was absorbed. The economy grew, and the farms grew. Science and education were raised and elevated. This was an infrastructure, and we sensed the great winds of peace with our neighbors, the Palestinians. I saw great excitement, and among the leaders, many of them here. Both of these agreements that we reached will allow them to reach democratic elections and will allow us to distance ourselves from ruling another country. And with Jordan, who was not excited, there was a great desert between us, and we made it with potential to be green. The Middle East was opened anew and born anew, and a coalition of peace was built. A local coalition backed by an international coalition. The roots of the United States and Europe, and of Asia, and Africa, and Australia, and our area. Everyone came, just like us, to attest to your personality and character, and to testify that the road you began will continue. Leah, we are all with you, and with your family. I see our people very distressed, a nation with tears in their eyes. The world also knows
that the man who murdered you will not be able to murder the idea that you carried. You left us a road that we will follow with instinct and faith. The nation cries, tears of unity, though, and crying but of peace. Peace with our neighbors. I see our Arab neighbors, and I want to tell them peace is attainable, both here and with you. We are not allowed to postpone or hesitate in reference to peace. That must be all-inclusive for the old and the young, for all the nations. And from here, Yitzhak, Jerusalem, that we came, and that the three faiths were born in, we will say, in the words of Rachel, our mother, my voice cries, and your eyes are filled with tears. But there is a price for your deeds, and there is hope in the name of God. Goodbye, my eldest brother, the bringer of peace. We will add and continue to carry this peace for near and far, that you wanted and expected in your life and death.